To convert your data into a chart to visualize your data graphically, go ahead and click anywhere within your table or data range, and then come up here, click on the Insert tab, go to the Charts group, and got a lot of charts to choose from. You have your pie chart or donut chart. You also have the line chart and the column chart. Let's click on that. And you've got the 2D column or the 3D. Well, let's go with the 2D and keep it simple. Select it, and there we go. Now when you hover over it, you can see a four-way arrow. When you see that, click on it because it means you can drag your chart in any one of the four directions. I'm going to place it right here. And then to resize the chart, you get the resizing handles. So go ahead and hover over any one of those resizing handles until you can see arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then you can go ahead and click and drag it and stretch it either more horizontally or close it in more vertically and then let go. And then let's see if this thing checks out. So you can look at it down below and say that it got my books and MP3s. There's the books and MP3s and for the months. And you can see when I hover over it, that's the horizontal category axis. If you remember your algebra days, the horizontal axis is the x-axis, and then up here, the vertical axis is going to be the y. So looking at this, we can see that on the horizontal axis, we've got the month of January, then we have two bars. The blue bar is for the books, and it goes up to 600. There's 600. And then the red bars for the MP3s, it goes just a little past 800, which should represent 825. If you hover over the column, there you go, you can see the exact value, and the pop-up is 825. And also shows you the month, and it's for the MP3 series. And then to customize your chart, when you have it selected, you'll see over to the right you get the chart elements tag, the chart format, and the chart filtering, which are the same things you'll find up here on the design and format tabs, the related contextual tabs for what we have selected here. So for example, like on the chart elements, when you click on it, it opens up the chart elements, as opposed to coming up here on the design tab, going to the chart layouts group, clicking on add chart elements. You basically get the same thing here. But the reason why you may want to do it over here is because if you're not on the chart tools tabs and you're on another tab, you don't want to click to get over to that, then just come over here and then click on it. Well, click on it to open it up. And you can go ahead and uncheck the accesses, in which case you don't get your horizontal or vertical axis, so I can't tell the values of these things, as opposed to checking it so you can see both of them, the months and the total amount in sales. Now that's one level, the first level. The second level comes over here when you hover over it. You see that little triangle? Click on it, pops it open to the second level. So if you want to be able to not just eliminate both accesses, but just one, maybe it's the horizontal, so get rid of the months, uncheck that, and it's gone, or bring it back. Then you have that level, the second level, or if you really want to get super detailed, as much as Excel is going to allow you to at this point, go to More Options and it opens up the task pane over to the right when it comes to formatting your access. So you got the access type, automatically select based on data or text access. There's the vertical access crosses. There's the access position. You can have it between tick marks or on tick marks. So you can see by looking at the chart here how it's going to be on the tick marks as opposed between the tick marks, the months here. And then we got the tick marks themselves. We can go ahead and expand that and scroll down. And then you can have the major type on the outside, which is on the outside of the chart, but if I put them on the inside, they'll come up here inside the chart. So if I click on the drop down arrow and go to inside, they're right on the top instead of the outside. I don't know if you can see that, so you may want to practice this with our exercise file. In any case, and then you can also expand that and look at the labels here and specify the intervals, the distance from the axis, the label position, whether you want it next to the axis or high above it. So instead of below it, it's high above it. And that doesn't look good, doesn't work for me. So I'll go ahead and hit undo, or you can choose it back to the default, which was next to axis. And then when you're done with that, go ahead and close out. And then let's see the other chart elements, click on it to open it up. And then we have data labels, hover over that, and it gives you a preview of it over in the chart. You can see, oh, let me go back, data labels. So if I check it, it adds the labels at the top of each column here, or if I want to go past level 1 to level 2, click on its corresponding triangle and say you want the labels on the center, inside base, and you can just look over here as I hover over each one, how that's going to show. And then if you want the more detailed, level 3, pick More Options, opens up the task pane, and then you can just go ahead and go nuts in there. And let's close out of that because I want to keep it simple. And let me go ahead and click on it again and say that we don't want data labels. And then you've got the option for the legend. there's the legend, books and MP3s. Uncheck it, disappears, but let's check it again. Now it puts it over to the far right. Go ahead and click on the triangle, and you get the second level. Let's have it at the bottom like we used to have it, or go ahead and click on more options, and again, you get more details in the task pane to work with. Let's go ahead and close out of that. Next is the format options. Click on that to open it up, and you've got style and color. First of all, the style, go ahead and scroll through and find the style that you like and hover over it to get a preview of it over in the spreadsheet. Ooh, I like that one. Go ahead and select that one. You can see in the pop-up down below it's Style 5 as opposed to Style 4. Let's go with Style 5. And then keep in mind again what you choose over here. It's got the same thing up here on the Chart Tools tabs, the Designer format. So there's chart styles. You can choose them up here. You can also change the colors here, or come down here with it open and choose the Color tab. And you can see that the color for the first bar is going to be blue. Then it's going to be red. If I come down here, then you can go ahead and look over here on the chart and see that in the preview, the first bar is going to be blue, the second one's going to be green. And that's Colorful Palette 2. I'll go ahead and select that one because that's very colorful. And then down below it says, how do I change these colors? Well, as you recall in an earlier training video, we learned about themes, and that's coming up here, clicking on the Page Layout tab, going to the Themes group, clicking on the Colors drop-down arrow, and you can select any one of these, and you can see over there on the spreadsheet how it updates as I hover over each one of these and select it if you want to go with that. That looks cool. So basically I overwrote what I selected here with the theme color, and that's fine. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, the filter. So if I don't want to see books and I just want to focus on MP3s, then come over here and say I want to uncheck books, and then come down here and click apply, and then I just focus on the MP3s. Then when I want to bring the books back into play, check books of course, and then come down here and click apply, and we're good. And if you want to switch your data around, let's go ahead and select the chart again so we can get its related contextual tabs like the Design tab. Go to the Data group. Right now we have the months. I can go ahead and switch the data and say let's switch the books and MP3s to being up here, then have the months down below. So you'll have everything grouped by books and then by MP3s, and within the books you'll have January, February, March, and so on. So if I come up here and I click on Switch Column and Row Data, there we go. We have everything grouped by books and then by MP3s. And then within the books, you got January, February, March. Just hover over any one of those to be exact and go, okay, that's MAR for March. Cool. And then that's for April and so on. And then also for the MP3s. And you've got the legend here now that used to be books and MP3s, which is now the month. So what you see in blue, or the first blue, is going to be for January. Then it changes the color to February. But again, you can hover over them. I'm going to go ahead and hit undo. Go back to the way it was, or you can go ahead and click on Switch Row Column so we can go back to the way it was, because you only have two choices. Once you switch it, you can only switch it back. Then let's go ahead and scroll down and do some additional charts here. Like let's click in here, come back up here, click on the Insert tab, go to the Charts group, and let's do a line chart. Click on the drop-down arrow, do a 2D line, something simple, select it, and well, that's pretty simplistic. I like that. Instead of working with the columns, now I can just work with the line and see where the dips really come into play here, more so with it. Then if I need the exact plot, go ahead and hover over at that point in time, and you can see that that's the series Fantasy. That point is for April, instead of coming down here and trying to go, okay, it's right there. No, that gets over into May with the exact value of 225. And then we can go ahead and click and drag this up and then resize it so it fits it right there. And then let's scroll down. Then the last one here is not a table, so I can show you that it doesn't matter if you have a table or just a data range, as long as you built the database correctly so it can distinguish between the column labels and the rest of the database. Then just come back up here, click on the Insert tab, go to the Charts group, and for this small database, I'll do a pie, because with the number of categories that the values are being represented by, it's going to be one for each pie slice, and so there's only a few, so that's easier than like a lot of pie slices. So, but then that's up to you. But for me, the donut or the pie chart works best for small databases with only a few categories. So come up here, click on the pie drop-down arrow. You can see the 2D pie preview down below, 3D pie or donut. That's always fun. Let's go back to 3D, select it, and then we can go ahead and click and drag it around. And then if we want to resize it just a bit, not too bad. Human Resources is going to be blue. And if I have a problem with the size of the color here, can of course go ahead and hover over the pie slice, and okay, that's Human Resources. Gives me the value and the percentage of the slice. Oh, that's fun. And don't forget, you can also come over here and click on the format option to choose the different pie styles, or come up here for the, well, let me click off and select it again so I can get the related contextual tab design for the styles here and hover over each one. And that one's nice. Ooh, that one's got the legend over to the right hand side. This one actually has the percentages in the center. Oh, this one's got the legend actually on each slice. And I'll show you later on how you can tweak that, customize it, and actually add the numbers to each slice and also the labels if you don't like what you see up here or you want a combination of such. So pick one, select it. Cool. When it comes to modifying the charts, the first thing I want to show you is the resizing. So all you have to do is go ahead and select the chart. You get the circles, the resizing handles. If you want to resize it both horizontally and vertically at the same time, then go ahead and hover over the bottom right-hand corner resizing handle until you get arrows pointing in opposite directions. Then you can go ahead and click and drag it up to shrink it or to collapse it in. But if you hold down the Shift key, it'll keep it proportional, meaning that it won't do it more horizontal than vertical from its original size here. And so if I go ahead and leave it like that, let go, great. If you want to do it numerically, then rather freehand clicking and dragging, then with it selected, come up on its related contextual format tab, go to the size group, and there you go. So you can see that there's the height of it and there's the width. So the height, if I type in 3 and hit enter, it doesn't keep it proportional, it just stretches the height. So if I don't like that, I can go ahead and hit undo and come over here and click on its expandable dialog box button to open up the task pane. And you can see that locked aspect ratio is not checked by default, so it doesn't keep it locked in proportion. So if I change the height and I come up here and I delete it and I type in 3, with it locked, it'll update the width to keep it in proportion to its original size, but just making it bigger. So 3, hit enter, then it goes from 5 to 6.28. Go ahead and close out. And then next, if you want to change the chart type, if you no longer want a column chart, you want to update that and change it to something else, you can do it one of a couple of ways. Either come up here and click on the Design tab, go to the Type group, click on Change Chart Type, and then go ahead and choose from one of the categories like bar, and select one. Well, you don't get too many options. Go ahead and click on it to select it, click Okie dokie, and I'm going to undo that because I don't like that. Or you can go ahead and right-click above the column labels in the plot area. When you right-click, you can change the chart type and go back to the same window and then choose and then click OK. I'm going to keep it the same here. And then next we got styles. So up here on the Design tab, you got the chart styles. You can click on the More button to see more of it. And if you like the style but not the color, then go ahead and click on the colors to choose a different color as we talked about in the previous training video. And then let me go ahead and click off. If you want to change the color, not for the entire chart, but just a series, like the MP3 series that's green, with it selected, then you can go ahead and right-click on it, and you got the fill, click on the drop-down arrow, and choose a color like blue, a darker blue, and you can see that you changed the series, updated it, so we can do it individually. Let me go ahead and hit undo. And speaking of which, how about the labels? Now we talked a little bit about it in the previous training video, and we did it for all the columns in our column chart, which as you recall to do that, let me go ahead and click off so you don't have a series selected. You can come over here and click on the chart elements to open it up, or come up here on the Design tab to the chart layout and click on Add Chart Elements. Brings up the same list, basically. And then we go down to Data Labels, and then when I hover over it, over in the chart it gives us a preview, so I can go ahead and check it to accept it or uncheck it. Now that's for every single column. If you don't want it for every single column, but like let's say just for the book series, go ahead and select the book series. Just select any one of the columns for the book series and it selects all the columns in that series. And then you can go ahead and go up and over to Data Labels and it just adds it to the selection, in this case the books. So check it, now it's added to the books. And if you don't want that, let's go ahead and uncheck it. You just want to focus on one, like the highest one out of all of them. I think it's this one. Hover over it, the value is 975. Go ahead and click on it. It selects the series for MP3s, but then click on it again, and it isolates it to just that column. Then we can go ahead and right-click on it. If you want to add a data label there, that works. Or just come over here with the chart element still open and check that, and it adds it just there. And if you want more options, again, hover over Data Labels in the Chart Elements window, click on the triangle to open it up, inside, outside, or go to more options. Let's go ahead and do data callout and then more options to open up the task pane. And let me go ahead and hover over the border of it so I can click and drag it. And you can see how it's tied to it. Very nice. Click and drag the resizing handle, make it bigger. And in fact, let's go to the Format tab. Let's do a shape fill, make it kind of, maybe instead of a shape fill like red accent 2 lighter 80%, what you can do, you can go ahead and do shape style for the callout. Maybe that's pretty cool. And you can also change the shape outline. We can do something dark green, so you can go nuts on that. You can also double click really fast to select the text within it. And you know that you have the text selected when you see the mini formatting toolbar, so you can make it bold. Well, okay, it just changed July, so let's click and drag it again so I can go ahead and make it, click on it to make it all bold again. You want to make sure you got it all selected. And then you can change the size of it, make it larger, change the font color to something else. In any case, let me go ahead and click off of it and then reselect it again. And come over here and click on Label Options in the task pane and click on Label Options to expand it. And right here, you can show the leader lines by checking on it. And this already has a line to it, but if you have a label, that's not a call out here. In fact, if you right click on it and you want to go to change data label shapes, hey, there's another option here. How about if we just go to a rectangle? That way it loses the call out tag or the little funnel that goes down to it. And so now you can see the leader here, so you can get rid of that. So you can go, okay, July 975, which column does that go to? Well, it's probably this one because that's the highest one. In any case, you can just go ahead and eliminate the guesswork and say that you want to show the leader lines. Now remember, what I do to one, I can do to all. I just have to select all of them by selecting one. It selects the entire data series, and then I can go ahead and right-click and do the same thing. And then I can go ahead and, let me close out of here, go to Chart Elements, and uncheck data labels, check data labels, so I can update it for all of them and not just the one. And then go ahead and click on the triangle, get more options, brings up the task pane, show the leaders. Yes, so if I go ahead and click and drag one up, you can see that it leads right to it since it's not right next to it. Cool. And then as we did before, if you want to focus on one in the series, then go ahead and with it selected, choose your fancy shape style, or with it selected, hit the delete key on the keyboard. And then that way we don't have to focus on one, or maybe this one, hit the delete key, maybe just the first three, then the last one's over here. Let's go ahead and close out of that. And then next, how about if we want to go ahead and move our chart? I'm not talking about just moving it around, which by the way, if you click and drag the plot area, you can actually move it within the area of the chart. So let's go ahead and hit undo. Instead of dragging the plot area, unless of course you intend to do that, go to the outer chart area. You can see in the pop-up it says chart area. Then go ahead and click and drag. I'm not talking about moving the chart around within the same spreadsheet, but how about to another spreadsheet? You can cut and paste or copy and paste, or if you want the chart to take up an entire spreadsheet, go ahead and right-click on the chart and you go down to Move Chart. You can move it as an object in another worksheet, like let's go over to Sheet 2, click Okie dokie. There it is in Sheet 2, or right-click on it here, move the chart, and say that you want it as a new sheet, and we'll just call it the Spiffy Chart Sheet. So we'll create a new worksheet, and that chart will take up the entire worksheet called the Spiffy Chart Sheet. Click Okie dokie. Hooey, that's one spreadsheet. Right-click it here, but keep in mind you've got the plot area, so you want to go just above it to get the chart area, because you get two different shortcut menus. And in the chart area, just right up close to the top, then you can come down here, move the chart, and we can go back to it as an object in our Sheet 1. Click Okie dokie. It deletes the Spiffy Chart Sheet and it puts it right back, well, almost to where we began. Let's go ahead and not click and drag it in the plot area, but come up here to the chart area, and then we can click and drag so you can actually move the entire chart. And then finally, if you want to modify your data, what you see in the chart, come up here on the Design tab to the Data group, and we've got our Select Data. Click on it, and you can see the current data range. You can see the marching ants is that range over there. And if you don't want it to be that range or some other range, then with it selected, go ahead and click and drag and select something else. And then right now, you can see when I click and drag this down, it's just going to include books. And if I want it to include everything else again, go ahead and click and drag. And then you get the preview before you click OK and accept the change. You can do it that way, or if you don't want it permanent, you always want the option to be here for MP3s, but you don't want to see MP3s, just books, then just uncheck it here. And then go ahead and click Okie dokie. And then when you want to go back to seeing the MP3s, it's there. You just have to come back up here and click on Select Data and then check it. As opposed to coming back up here, if you only selected the range from sales to books, then you have to reselect it from sales over to MP3s to include books and the MP3s. And also, if you only want to see certain months within the range, you could go ahead and click on Edit the Range and then say, I don't want to focus on that, but that would be more permanent as opposed to clicking Cancel and just saying, look, how about if I just go ahead and uncheck the last 3 months? That way, when I want them back again, I can just go ahead and come back up here and do Select Data again. So you can see that September is the last month as opposed to December, the last 3 months, October, November, and December. Come back up here, select your data again. And then you can also, let's select books and click on Edit. There's the series names, so it's in marching ants. Then there's the series values. You can go ahead and edit that and say don't include everything down here, but maybe just down to September. Just by clicking on the collapsible dialog box button, clicking and dragging to select it. I'm just going to stick with the original here, hit enter, but nonetheless you can make the changes there. Then the series name is pulling from that cell. When you see equals, it's pulling whatever's in that cell over. You can go ahead and overwrite that if you want, my spiffy books, then hit enter, and then go ahead and click OK, and there it is, my spiffy books. But keep in mind that if you update it over here in the table, it's not going to reflect it in the chart unless you go back to the chart, come back up here, click on Select Data, and click on Edit. Delete it here and say that you want it to equal by selecting the cell here, B2, click Okie dokie, click OK. So when you come up in here and you type in my spiffy books and hit enter, because it's linked to it, it updates it over here in the chart in the legend My Spiffy Books. A trend line is a line marking in the chart to predict future trends. So if my cells are right here, how's it going to look in the future? To add a trend line to your chart, like either to the MP3 series or the books, go ahead and right-click on one of the series, like if we do it to the MP3s, right-click, and then go down to Add Trend Line, select it, opens up the task pane. Let me go ahead and scroll over so we can see it. And you get the different trend line options, exponential, linear, logarithmic, a little bit more curve to it. And then we can scroll down and choose other options, like as far as forecasting goes, once it gets to the point here, you want to forecast what it's going to be like past December into next year, like January and February. How about if we go ahead and type in 2 and hit enter? So that's what it looks like if we keep on this trend. You can even go backwards to see where we actually came from previously up to 2. And then as far as the formatting options, because I don't know about you, this green is a little bit hard to see. Go ahead and click on the paint bucket to fill in line, and then click on the color drop-down arrow, and let's do something red. Okay, that pops. And then let's do the width. Let's make it really thick. 2 points, pretty thick. You can do the transparency, click and drag. Ooh, fade in, fade out, fade in. Let's go ahead and go back down to 0 here. And then we can do the begin arrow types where it begins over on the left-hand side. Click on it and say, let's begin with the circle. So we've got the circle. You can see down below in the legend, begins with the circle. And then the end arrow type, click on it and say it's going to end with an arrow that looks like that. So you can see it's pointing that way or trending that way. And then go ahead and close out. If you want to delete it, make sure you got it selected. If I click off and I'm trying to select it, but I can't quite click on it, you can come up here, click on the Format tab, go to the current selection group, and right now what's selected is the plot area. Click on the drop-down arrow and look for your trend line. There it is. Go ahead and select it, and it's got it selected, and then you can just hit the delete key to get rid of it. Let me go ahead and hit undo to bring it back. And then to format the selection, if you can't double click on it to bring up the task pane, then go ahead and click on Format Selection, brings up the task pane for you. And then you can go ahead and, well, like the trend line name, if you don't like the default here, which is automatic, you can come down here and select Custom and call it My Spiffy Trend and hit enter. And then down the legend you can see it's My Spiffy Trend. There are two types of titles you can add to your charts. One is the overall title, like this is for the sales, the chart is, so we can add a title that says sales. And then you can have your vertical y-axis title, which is instead of hundreds of dollars like 400, 600, we could say with the title it's in millions, so that would be 400 million, 600 million, and so on. Then down below we could have it for months, although it's pretty obvious those are months. In any case, to go ahead and add a title to your chart or to the accesses, go ahead and select the chart and then click on its corresponding plus sign. Come over here to the chart elements and you get the chart title. Hover over it, you can see it over on the chart, the preview of it before you actually check it. And you can go this way, or as we talked about in the earlier training video, you can come up here on the design tab, go to the chart layouts group and add your chart elements that way. Brings up pretty much the same list here. Go down to chart title. You've got none. You can do it above the chart or centered overlay, and you get more title options. When you select more title options, it actually adds the chart title to it. Okay, the text box with the generic name chart title. And then over to the right, you get your options of fills. You can do a solid fill. Fills in the color. If you don't like that color, go ahead and choose something else, a different color. You can do gradient fill, or even come up here, click on the Format tab, go to the Shape Styles group, and do a fancy shape style, something, purplishy. And then next you have your, shadows, glows. How about something glowy, glowing, warm? You can go ahead and click on the preset drop-down arrow and choose something that's nice and glowable. Ooh, that's a little bit awful looking. In any case, I digress. Let's keep moving on. And then you can also make changes here for the alignments. And as far as the alignment goes, with the chart titles, there's not much to work with. And text direction, you can rotate it. Ooh, that crunches everything. But nonetheless, you can do it. Let's go ahead and hit undo. And then you get your text options, so you can flip over and say, okay, for the text within the text box, let's go ahead and with the solid fill, instead of black, we can click on the color drop-down arrow and choose something else, maybe red. All right, let's not do that. Let's go back to black. And then you can also change if you want a glow around the text, a reflection, a shadow. I'm not going to do that because that's going to get horrendous here with my chart title. I want to keep it simple. And then also with the text, the same options that we had for the title options. And go ahead and close out of it. To update it from the generic chart title, just go ahead and double click inside of it, or click inside of it. Double click will select the word, and then you can hit the delete key and hit the backspace arrow and then type over it and say this is my sales, and then go ahead and click off. Or you can click inside of it, come up here on the formula bar, hit equals, and then go ahead and select a cell that has a label that you want to pull over into for the chart title, hit enter, and it's sales. So if I come over here and I update this, the label for it, instead of sales, I just say sale, hit enter, it updates it to sale. Hey, now we're having a sale, not sales. Let me go ahead and hit undo. And then to add titles for your vertical y-axis or horizontal x-axis to delineate, like this is in millions of dollars, then you can go ahead and select it, come over here, click on the Add Chart Elements, and then there it is, Axis Titles. You hover over it, you can see the preview of it over in the chart. You can see we've got our vertical axis title and our horizontal. Now if you check this, it'll add both of them, but if you don't want to add both, click on its corresponding little triangle, and you can check to add just the primary horizontal and or the primary vertical, check both. And if you want to get into more details, the third level is more options, opens up the corresponding task pane, and then you can go ahead and do what we did like with the chart title. You got your three options here for the title options and also your text options, but for the title options, if you want to do a color fill, that's purple. Oh, that's nice. And then for the text options, maybe we could do something green. I'll go ahead and undo that and leave it as black. In any case, you make the choices here. And then also, if you want glowing around it, everything that we just covered with the chart title, it's the same here. So when I'm done, I can go ahead and close out. And then to go ahead and update the generic axis title, of course, if you want to click in here, hit the delete key, the backspace key, get rid of it all and say this is for months. And then go ahead and click up here and triple click really fast. You can select all the text within that text box and then just type over it. And this is in millions of dollars. And then go ahead and click off. Cool. And then if you want to get rid of it, you can do one of many ways. You can either go ahead and select the axis title box, then hit the delete key on the keyboard. That works, or hit undo. Probably the fastest solution. as opposed to coming over here and clicking on the plus sign, and then going to the axis titles, clicking on the triangle and unchecking the vertical axis to remove it, or coming up here on the Design tab, Add Chart Elements. We're not adding, but we're going to a chart element, which is the axis title, and adding the primary vertical back in again. But then we have to, well, let's click off, update that again to save millions of dollars. There are many different ways you can go about formatting your chart, and we already covered some of them, but since this is all about formatting it, we'll start with the basics and then work ourselves up to more advanced features or options. So first off, let's talk about chart styles. By selecting your chart, if you want to find out what other styles are available, then go ahead and either click on the paintbrush. You can see you got a list of styles and the color for the styles, so you can select colors. Let's go back to styles, or you can come up here and click on the Design tab, and there's the chart styles there as well, and also the colors. So first off, the styles, if you want a preview of it, just go ahead and hover over it. You can see down below in the spreadsheet the preview of that style. You can see in the pop-up below my selection here is style 5. Go ahead and click on it if you want to accept it. And then as far as the colors, you can either come down here if it's still open and click on it, color, or you can come up here and click on change colors. And you can see the default is selected here. It's colorful palette 1 as opposed to colorful palette 2. The difference being is that the first column in the column chart is going to be blue. This palette is going to be, the second column is going to be green. Then if I choose that one, the first column is going to be red, and then the second column is going to be purple. Ooh, I like that one. Let's select that one. And then if this is still open, you can go ahead and hover over these to get a preview. And then if you don't like the colors here, you see where it says, how do I change these colors? When you hover over it, it gives you a pop-up and it says you can go ahead and change the theme colors. You can customize that, which I talk about in another training video. But in short, if you want to choose another theme color than what you see here or customize one, then just come up here and click on the Page Layout tab, go to the Themes group, and there it is, Colors. Click on it, and as you hover over any one of these, it updates the colors through the entire workbook with that theme. Or you can come down here and click on Customize Colors and create your own custom theme colors. Let's go ahead and click off and leave that for another training video and click off of that to get rid of it. And then next, if you want to go ahead and change the chart layout and see what other chart layout options are available, because maybe there's a better one than what the default is here. With the chart selected, come back up here, click on the Design tab, go to Chart Layouts group, there it is, Quick Layout. Click on it, and you can hover over it to get a preview of it. Down below on the chart there, you can see the name of it's Layout 1. That's okay. Legends over to the right. Let's take a look at Layout 5. Ooh, that's kind of kooky. It's got the legend to the left and then the numbers displayed below the months or the columns there. All right, let's select that. That's okay by me. And speaking of the legend here, you got it over to the left-hand side, but if you want to change that up or choose a different layout that doesn't have it, or you want to get rid of it or add to it, then you can come over here and click on the plus sign to open up the chart elements, and there it is, legend, hover over it, and it adds it over to the right, so now you have what could be considered as two legends, because you have the colors down here assigned to the MP3s and books, but when you hover over it, it adds it over to the right by default. And if you want more options, go down to the second level by clicking on the triangle, and you can see a preview of it when you go to right, top, or left, or select more options. And let me go ahead and scroll over. When you select more options, it automatically adds it, and then you can go ahead and say, well, let's put the legend up at the top. And then when you're done, you can close out of it. Or if you want to go ahead and format the legend, you got the paint bucket, which you can go ahead and add some color to the legend if you want to fill it in. Oh, can't see it, so maybe with that color I want to make it more transparent. There we go. Not too bad. You can do gradient fill. And speaking of the gradients down below, it's going from the color white over to blue, and we actually have some extra stops here. And so the purpose of this, let me go ahead and select the stops and delete them. So we just look at two stops, the beginning and the end. So it starts with the color white and goes all the way up to the color blue. So the way that it's working in the legend here is that it's going from blue all the way up to white. And so if we don't like the direction of going from blue bottom to white top, then go ahead and come over here and change the direction and say maybe that you want it from, you can see this one, linear up where it's blue top, white bottom. You can see it there. Also, you can add additional gradient stops. So if you want it to go from white to one color, then from that color to another color, go ahead and click Add. And with it selected, go ahead and click on the color option. Maybe we want to go to orange first. Okay, that's not looking too good, but nonetheless, you can see my point here. So it's going from white to orange, then from orange to blue. Now, if you don't want it to transition to orange too quickly, then go ahead and click and drag it over to the right. So it's a longer transition before it actually gets to it, and then from a short transition to orange to blue. And like I said, you can always, if you don't like it, select it and then remove it. Now you can do that not only for the legend, which by the way, if you don't like the legend, you can either go ahead and uncheck it by clicking on the chart elements and unchecking it there, or just with it selected, hit the delete key on the keyboard and gets rid of it. Also unchecks it here. Let's go ahead and close out of the task pane, which by the way, if you want to bring up the task pane to get more formatting options as it were, and you don't want to go through all the steps to get to the third level, to go down to more options, then you can either double click really fast on one of the items within the chart, like the chart title, double click on the border, it brings up the task pane, or you can go ahead and just simply right click and you want to go to format. That's either format chart title or right click and go to format data series. And so when it comes to formatting data series, by the way, it selects all the books. And so instead of formatting and setting a style for all the columns, if I just want to change the style for one of the columns, then go ahead and select one of the columns in the data series so it selects all of them. Then you can come over here. Well, let me click off and let me go ahead and select it again. So now we got everything selected, but I removed the pop-up that was in my way. Then come over here to the task pane, the format data series, and you've got your series options, which is the primary and secondary axis. We'll leave that alone and keep it simple. Other options include the effects, shadow, glow, soft edges, which by the way you can find up here on the ribbon, the related contextual format tab for shape effects, shadow, glow, soft edges, and so forth. But let me go over to the fill and say that we want a solid fill. Default color is blue. You can of course go ahead and change that, maybe make it orange, and maybe not so harsh, but make it more transparent. And then if you want to add effects, we can go back to the effects option and maybe see if we can add a glow to it, something that glows around it. Ooh, that's quite the fat glow. So if we don't want it to glow that much, let's go ahead and maybe choose another preset that's not as huge of a glow, or you can change the size of a glow by going down to something a little bit softer there. And that's for the series. And if you want to just focus on the one, like let's say we want to focus on this guy right here, which is the month of July for MP3 sales, the one that made the most sales out of all the months here between books and MP3s. After you select it once and it's got all the others selected, then go ahead and click on it again to isolate that and say, okay, I just want to focus on that one. Come back over here in the task pane, and pretty much anything you select over here in the chart is always going to have like a fill, effects, and then something proprietary to it, in which case this is for the series options. That when I click on it, again, you can toggle with the primary and secondary axis, but I want to keep it simple. And let's go back to the fill, select a gradient fill. Well, I don't want gradient fill, we can do a solid fill, something that really pops out, and click the drop down arrow, maybe a dark blue, and something a little bit transparent, so it kind of blends in with the rest, but not too much, but really stands out. So after you click off of it, you can say, okay, that one really takes the cake. That one we want to focus on because we had the most success in sales for the month of July for our MP3s. So again, anything you select throughout the chart, you look over here, you're going to get the fill, you're going to get the effect options, and then something that's proprietary to that, like this is for the size. If I select the vertical axis, again, paint, effects, size and properties, then access options. And let's go over that actually, but let's don't do it in that chart because that one's junked up. Let's go ahead and scroll down and select that chart here and do it for this. Let's go ahead and select the y-axis. And again, you get the paint bucket, so you can go ahead and color it. You can give it special effects. You can change the size and properties of it. But I want to cover the access options, and more specifically, the number. Because maybe you want to take a look at the numbers over here and see if you can tweak it, like the currency. If you don't want it in currency, you want to click on the drop down arrow, maybe do it in percentage, fraction, general number. Gets rid of the dollar signs, but let's go back to currency. Number of decimal places, the symbol, instead of the dollar symbol, you can do the Russian ruble, or you can choose your negative numbers if you have any, if you want the format to be in red or parentheses. Then finally, the format code. So looking at the code, I don't know if you can see it, but you have the dollar symbol, so that's going to be displayed here. And then you've got the comma, which means it's going to put that every thousands. So there we go, right after the three numbers for 100,000. And then you have the pound symbols, or the number symbols, which is the digit placeholder. And we also have the zeros, and the 0 is a digit placeholder too, but displays insignificant zeros if a number has fewer digits than there are zeros. In other words, when you look at the last two zeros here, if I have 90 cents, 90, the 0 would be considered insignificant, so like in Excel it wouldn't normally display it. But if you want to see that insignificant 0 because it's significant to you, then you want to add that insignificant 0 placeholder. So you don't see 0.9, you can say, oh, it's 0.90 for 90 cents. So go ahead and customize it the way you'd like to see it. And we can add one more thing to it at the end. So the comma separates it by hundreds of thousands, but if you put a comma at the end of it, that can be used as a thousands separator. In other words, you can scale it back by multiples of thousands. So when you look at this, you're like, okay, that's too much space there, especially if you get to the millions or hundreds of millions. Right now, the hundreds of thousands, how about if we just go ahead and scale it back 1,000 by adding a comma at the end and clicking on Add. And so we can put an axis title over here that says this is in thousands after we scaled it back by adding a comma. So when we read it, well, let me put in the axis title. Let's come over here, click on plus. Let's hover over that, click on its triangle and say we just want the vertical axis title. And then double click really fast and say that's in thousands. And then go ahead and click off. And so with it selected, come over here again, the axis options, expand the number, and because we tweaked it, now it's a custom category based upon this type with the format, or you can click on the drop down arrow and choose another type. And we'll cover this in more detail in a later training video about advanced custom number formats, so you want to be sure to watch that so you can get more of a feel of how you can customize this, like if you want to add color to it. Like those negative numbers, you want to add it in red. Well, take a look at that training video, but I want to keep it simple here and show you how you can do some tweaks. And then other videos will help support what we've learned here and go into more detail about it. Dual axis charts are used to show more than one measurement on a single chart. So if I want to show a measurement for my MP3s and then one for my books, because currently this measurement right now is showing it both for the MP3 and the books, then I can go ahead and add a secondary axis over to the right-hand side. Now before I go ahead and add it, what do I want it to represent, the MP3 or the books? The MP3s in blue. So let's have that represent the left-hand side, the primary axis, and then for the secondary axis, we'll have it for the books. Because the books will have less sales, I think that the value representing the topmost will be 1,000. It will cap at 1,000. So to go ahead and add the books as the secondary, I can go ahead and right-click on one of the columns for the books, and it selects the series of columns for the books, and then come down and click on Format Data Series, opens up the corresponding task pane, takes us right to it. You can see this one's tied to the primary axis. Let's change it over to the secondary, and there you go. Now with it changed over, it's now being measured over by the secondary, and the highest that it gets almost to 1,000 as opposed to over here in the blue, which gets closer to 1,200. So you'd be incorrect by measuring both of them to the left and both of them to the right, which brings up a good point. How do we go ahead and say that this one, this secondary axis, because when you hover over it, it doesn't say it represents the books, is for the books? Well, just make sure that you remember it, and then go ahead and add your axis labels, which you can do by clicking on the plus symbol, the chart elements, and going down to axis titles. And you can see that it adds 3 axis titles for the primary and secondary, the verticals, and then one primary for the horizontal. So if you want to go ahead and click on it to expand it, well, I don't want a primary horizontal axis because months is self-explanatory. I don't need to go ahead and add a title saying these are the months. But there's the primary vertical, check that, and I want one for the secondary vertical over to the right, check that, and then I can go ahead and click off, and then label them. Now this one over here is the measurement for the MP3s. You can go ahead and click inside of it, and I don't know about you, but trying to type in something vertically is just a little bit too challenging for me. So if I click on the border and come up here in the formula bar and then just type MP3, hit enter, automatically updates it, so it eliminates the challenge of typing vertically. Let's go ahead and select that once, come up here and type in books, hit enter, cool. Now we know that the red needs to be measured over to the right, the secondary axis, and then the primary is over to the left. Now if we want to do some comparison and say, okay, what about August? What is the MP3 cell for that? How do I take a look at that? Well, you do have some options. Let me go ahead and select the series here and come over in the task pane and click on series options, which again, if you need to bring up the task pane because you closed out of it, you can go ahead and right click on it, the series for books or MP3s, and go down to Format Data Series, and it brings it back up. And you can mess with the gap width. First off, we're doing it for the secondary, the books here, over to the right to kind of shrink it in so you can actually see the blue bars behind the books. You can do it that way, or let's go ahead and select the MP3s and then click and drag and go the other way to make it fatter. So we got this Laurel and Hardy thing going on, fat person, skinny person, and then we can go ahead and click off and go, okay, maybe that doesn't look too good, but nonetheless, you got that option. Or better yet, you may want to change the chart type into a different one like the line. That may be easier to measure, as you can see down below in the fantasy chart. So to change it to a different chart type, let's go right click in the plot area, go down to change chart type, and then let's come over here and choose the category line, and let's do lines with markers. That's fun. Go ahead and select that, take a preview of it. I like that. Go ahead and click Okie dokie, and that's better. But then it removed my secondary access, so I need to add it again. So I can go ahead and right click on the red line for the books, go down to Format Data Series, and then with the task pane open, we can select secondary access. So we're back to where we started, and then we'll have to add the chart title for the secondary access. Oh, here we go again. Access titles, go ahead and click on it to expand it. We want the secondary vertical. Go ahead and select it, and then come up here and type in books, hit enter, and then you can also add data labels. Let me close out of this so you can actually see, well, instead of hovering over it, the value for that point in time. Right click on it and go down to add data labels, or you can do callouts. Let's do data labels. Then go ahead and select a data label or one that selects the entire series. Hover over the border of it, click and drag it up and over, and then click off, and then you can not have it in the way but have a line pointing right to that label and saying, oh, that's $915 for what it looks like August. If there's a chart you created that you'd like to reuse over and over again with different data ranges or tables, go ahead and right click on it and go up to Save as Template. Opens up the window to save it in the Charts folder, which is a subfolder to the Templates folder. Let's go ahead and give it a name, a spiffy name, that is, my spiffy chart. Go ahead and click Save. And then to go ahead and use it, let's delete this so we can start from scratch. Go ahead and click inside any data range or a table. Then to insert it as a chart, come up here, click on Insert, go to the Charts group, click on its expandable dialog box button, and click on All Charts, and go to Templates, and hey, there it is, there's my spiffy. Go ahead and double click on it to insert it, and oh, that's nice. Now that's going to be available for any new workbook that you create. Now if you want to go ahead and overwrite the chart with some updates for your template, and then go ahead and make your changes, delete maybe the axis title over here, delete it over there, make some tweaks, then when you're ready, right click on it, go to Save As Template, and then go ahead and select it, the same name, click Save to overwrite it, and yes, we'll replace it, and then go ahead and do the same steps to insert it into another workbook by clicking in a table or a data range and follow the steps that we just went over. Now if you want to delete it because you no longer have use for it and you don't want it in your templates folder to insert, then come back up here, click on Insert, go to the Charts group, expand the Charts group, and then go to Templates, and then come down here and click on Manage Templates, and it says to delete, move, or rename your templates when you hover over it. Let's go ahead and click on it. And you can right click on it to go down to rename if you want to make changes to it, but we won't do that. We'll just right click on it and delete it and say yes, close out. And then when I click off of column, go back to templates, it's no longer there. Chart sharing, as far as this training video is concerned, is taking a chart we created in Excel and embedding it in Word or PowerPoint and have it linked to it. So any changes we make here in Excel, we'll update that chart in PowerPoint or Word. And it's easier for me then to go ahead and recreate the chart in PowerPoint Word than to have it here, because here you get more features and options when working with the data than you do in Word or PowerPoint. So to go ahead and to move this and embed it over into Word or PowerPoint, just go ahead and right click on the chart. I want to go up to copy it, and then let me right click on Word and go up to Word 2016. There we go, opens up. And then we can just go ahead and paste it. Right click, you get the paste options. You get the first one, use destination theme and embedded, keep source formatting. But then you get this little link in, that's part of a chain. So that link means to link. You can use the destination theme and link the data, or keep the source formatting and link the data. I like that one. Let's go ahead and click on that one to keep it. So with it linked now, any changes that I make back in Excel, let's go ahead and do it. Let's go back to Excel and do something drastic like 10,000, so we'll really know the difference when we make the change. Hit enter and go back to Word. Hooey, that's quite the change. And then let's go back to Excel, because if I go ahead and close out of Excel, let me save my work, and I'm in Word and I'd like to update this chart here. You can go ahead and right click in the plot area and go down to edit data. You can do it one of two ways. Either edit the data into something as an intermediary spreadsheet that's not actually Excel. Let me show you. Click on edit data. And it opens it up here. Click and drag the corner out, and you can say that this data is linked to an Excel spreadsheet. Changes here will be saved to that spreadsheet. So again, it's not Excel. You don't get the ribbon up at the top, but if you need to hurry and type in something real quick, then you can do it here. I'm not going to do that. Instead, you can right click, edit data. To edit the data in Excel, actually opens up the original workbook that it's linked to. Make whatever changes you want. 800, hit enter. Then we go back to the document, and you can see the update because it's linked. The pivot table is an interactive worksheet table, and it's used to quickly analyze and summarize large amounts of data. Just how large is my database? Well, if I hover over the bottom border of the selected cell until I can see a four-way arrow, double click really fast and it takes me to the end of it. And it has 109 rows. The first row is the header row, so I have a total of 108 records. To get back to the top, hover over the top border of the selected cell and double click really fast. Takes me to the top. And then to insert the table based upon this database, click anywhere in it and come up here and click on the Insert tab, go to the Tables group, and click on Pivot Table. If your database has been built correctly, by default it'll automatically select it. You can see I get the marching ants around it. But if it doesn't select it for you, then you may have design flaws with your database, in which case I recommend that you watch my training video on design flaws and sorting. Assuming that you've seen that and you're like, it's still not selecting it. And then you can go ahead and click the collapsible dialog box button for select a table or range, and then click and drag to select it, or you can go ahead and type it in, like cell A1, colon, which means through, and then H109. Hit the Enter key on the keyboard to pop it back open. And then where do you want to put the pivot table report? By default, it's going to be the new worksheet. I'm good with the defaults. Let's go ahead and click Okie dokie, and there we go. We have the skeleton over here for the pivot table. We haven't added any flesh to it until we go over to the pivot table field list and start checking the boxes, which is over to the far right. And these fields here are being pulled from my database. Where's the database? Well, it was on sheet 1 and it's still there. And we've got the fields here, the labels for the columns, the company, salesperson, order ID. Back here we've got company, salesperson, and order ID. So to start adding them to the pivot table, I can go ahead and just check them, or down below it says drag the fields between areas below, or drag it down to the areas below, and we have a total of 4. Now to understand this, the column and rows can be for our labels, or can be for the labels, and then any fields that contain values will be in this quadrant here. So let's just go ahead and start checking the boxes. I think the best way to do it is just dive right on into it. And the fields that I'd like to see in my pivot table are the salesperson's name, and you can see over here it adds them, and it added it down below in the rows, so there it is going by rows. And then let's go ahead and check the shipping date, the product name, and the total quantity sold. Then down below you can see that the total quantity is a number, and you can see it over here, the sum of the quantities sold. So it added over in the values quadrant. And then you got for the rows, the hierarchical structure. We have on top the salesperson. There's the salesperson. And then below that we have months, and then below that we have the actual date in the month for the sales. So I can come down here and go ahead and click and expand January. Or if I want to expand all of them, instead of just January here, Then I can come up here on the Analyze tab to the Active Field group and click on Expand Field, and expands it for all of them. If I don't want to see them expanded, to see the products that were sold on January the 15th, with the field selected, I can go ahead and click on Collapse, and then we're back to where we started. Let's go ahead and expand it so we can see the products sold for that date, then the products sold for that date for each salesperson, and then the total quantity sold. And let's see, for the total here is 70, and you get the subtotals down below, so you have 51 plus 19 is 70, and then the totals that make up that subtotal there, you can see when I select it down below on the status bar is 51, and then when I control click 19, the subtotals, and 51, you can see it adds up to 70, so it checks out. Now, as far as these names go, like sum of quantity, if that doesn't make sense to you, like you want the total quantity sold, you can change the name of it by either right-clicking on the label here and going down to Value Field Settings and typing over it with your custom name, or close out, you can come over here and click on its corresponding drop-down arrow and go to Value Field Settings there as well. And so go ahead and delete that and type in total quantity sold. And if you don't want to summarize it by the total with the sum function, maybe you want the maximum, the highest value that was sold during that period of time, then go ahead and select max. You can see it says max of quantity sold, so click okie dokie. Let's update it and see which product had the highest number in sales for that person. And it looks like 24 for Bob Appelman, the sales he made on January the 15th and the 21st. You can see there it is. The highest for that range for Bob Appelman is 24. The highest for Britt Hume is 30. Fabulous. Let's go ahead and change it back. So let's right-click on Max of Quantity and go down to Value Field Settings. And let's go back to adding up the total amount that was sold for each employee. And it wants to go back to Sum of Quantity, so we can delete that and type in. And in addition to this, if you want to change the number format, come down here and click on the number format button. You can choose if you want it in currency. And if you choose currency, maybe you want the different symbol because maybe the sales, if it was the price multiplied by the total sales, maybe it was done in Russia. You can go ahead and choose the Russian ruble. Let's go ahead and click cancel. Got the total quantity sold and click okie dokie. We're good. You can also sort, so you can see over here for the month of January, the 15th, goes ascending, so F before S, then T. If you want to sort it descending within that month, right-click, and then go to Sort, and we'll do Z to A, so it flips it, so the lower end of the alphabet goes all the way down to the upper end. You can also do it by employee. Let me go ahead and hit Undo. And right-click on Bob Appelman. I think Max Klinger's at the end, sorted at the end, but if we flip it and say we want to sort descending, Z to A, then okay, he's at the lower end of the alphabet for all the employees that we have working for us. Let me go ahead and undo that. And then to see the grand total for everything that's been sold, you can either scroll down to the end of the database or hover over the bottom border of a selected cell and double click really fast. Or you can come up here to the Active Field group on the Analyze tab and we can go ahead and collapse. So if we click collapse, depending upon your selection, it's going to collapse it for everybody, for all the salespeople, as opposed to if I expand it and collapse it for the selection here. Click collapse, it just does it for the products sold on that date for that month. So again, you want to make sure you've got it selected right before you click collapse. Then there's the grand total. We sold 1,048 products. And let's go ahead and expand it. And let's do it also for the dates for each month, expand those as well. You can also show the values as by percentage if you'd like. Just go ahead and right click on the value here, go down to show values as, and you can do the percent of grand total. So the grand total is 1,048. What percentage does that person have of that in sales? You can choose other options, but I'm going to choose percent of grand total. And so Bob Appelman did 6.68%. Ooh, there we go. Britt Hume, he's moving up. Almost 10% of the total sales he made. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and change it back so it shows no calculation by percentage. Right click, go down to show values as, no calculation, so we're back to where we started. Now you do get the filter option for your row labels, which by the way, when you select it, you can come up here. In the Active Field group on the Analyze tab, you can see it's salesperson. It doesn't say salesperson. You can go ahead and rename it there. but it's not going to overwrite the name for your row labels, which includes everything down below in the row quadrant. In any case, you can do it sales. Let me come over here and type in S, salespersons, and then you can see when I come over here and scroll up, you can see when I hover over it says salespersons, or let's do for quantity sold. Instead of right-clicking and going down to value field settings and trying to rename it, you can just come up here, again, name it, just say, let's choose sold, hit enter, updates that, and then down below, instead of total quantity, it's total sold as well. Doesn't update the original labels though. Still keeps it as quantity, but for your all intents and purposes, on the front end of the database, this is how you want to see it. Which, by the way, if you don't want to see certain things within your database, you want to pivot or filter, you can click on the row labels drop-down arrow, and you can say that you want to filter for salesperson, for months, for dates. And if you select months, you get the list of the months down below. But let's go back to salespersons and say that, let's uncheck all and say we just want to see Bob Appelman. Click okie dokie, and now we're just focusing on him. We pivoted to him and say I don't want to see anybody else, just him. And then notice here, as we learned in an earlier training video, when you filter for something, it adds a little funnel next to that triangle to let you know that if you're like, okay, these are all the employees we have. Bob Appelman, he's the only one that made sales. No, just look up above, and when you see a funnel, you know that something's being filtered. So let's go ahead and click on the drop-down arrow and go ahead and say select all. And then if you want, you can go ahead after you click OK to keep it simple. Go back, click on the drop-down arrow, and say you want to select products. Unselect all, and say you just want to focus on air mattresses. Click okie dokie, and there's all the sales for air mattresses. Let's click on the drop-down arrow. Let's go back to product and select all, click okie dokie, and we're back to where we started. Now you have that option, or if you want, you can rearrange this as it says here, drag fields between areas below to kind of figure out how you want to view your data in the pivot table. So I can go ahead and take the salesperson, hover over that field down below until I can see a four-way arrow, click and drag it. Let's put it up in the filters. Where does that take it? Up here just above it, and that's what we're doing is we're filtering for the database by salespersons. And it doesn't show you the salespersons down below, so if you want to see them, then I wouldn't move it up to the filter spot, which brings up another good point. When you move it up there and you click on the drop down arrow, whoops, hey, I can't choose multiple items. Well, go ahead and select this, and then you can go ahead and uncheck and say you just want it for Bob and Britt, click okie dokie. And then you'll have to remember it's being filtered for Bob and Britt because it doesn't have their names listed down below. You can see there it is, filtering it for that. And you can do a double filter, click on the drop down arrow and say for months, let's go ahead and deselect all. We just want January and February and click okie dokie. And there we go for both of them. There's the total sales for January. Nothing for February though, otherwise it would have pulled it in. Now, if you get a lot of these filter fields, instead of clicking on the drop-down arrow and selecting all again, you can come up here on the Analyze tab to the Actions group, click on the drop-down arrow, click on Clear, and say that you want to clear the filters, and you're back to where you started, showing it all. And let's go ahead and scroll down and change the hierarchical structure and click and drag the product so it's above months and dates. And so actually, let's go ahead and get rid of the months, click and drag that off. When I drag it off, you can see a little X below my pointer. When I let go of it, it just goes back to dates. So I no longer have to worry about the months, but just the exact date. So we have the product, sold a total of 50 on these dates. And if I want to group them back by months, go ahead and select any one of the dates here. Come up here on the Analyze tab to the group and click on the drop down arrow and say you want to go ahead and group the selection or group the field. Opens it up and it says, okay, starting at within the database from the initial start date of what I have in the database to the ending date. And there we go. It'll group by days and by months. Click okie dokie. Now we have it grouped by months. And then there's the days. If I didn't want to group it by days, then I can go ahead and hit undo and try it again. Click on group. Group selection. Get rid of days. Just group it by months. Click okie dokie. And boy, you could have fun with that and get very particular with your dates. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel to get notified of the latest videos. And for great specials on my products, please see the description below this video.